Hello, Claire.
Hello, good evening, and good evening, everyone in our audience. My name is Claire, and I'm the event coordinator for Village Books in Bellingham and Linden, Washington. And I am so delighted that everyone is here this evening. I'm so delighted to have the privilege to host this event. Before we get started, I do have a few announcements. If you have never been on a Crowdcast event before, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a green follow button. If you click on that, you can follow our Village Books Crowdcast channel, which enables you to see all the events that we have coming down the road. We have a lot of events happening. We're continuing our robust event programming even during a pandemic. We're not going to let a little thing like a pandemic slow us down, so I encourage you to follow us. Also, if you happen to be hearing an echo, first try turning down the volume of your computer. Second, try putting in some headphones. And if that doesn't work, make sure you only have one window open in your browser, that you only have one Crowdcast open. That can create an echo as well. Let's see. I want to let everybody know that we are going to keep the chat enabled tonight, that little conversation on the right-hand side of the screen. We do encourage you. We want audience participation this evening. So even though we can't see you and we can't hear you, you are welcome to type in any comments in the chat, ask any questions, and I'm going to be monitoring that chat, and we will try to keep this pretty conversational. I think that would be nice. Linda Trott Dickman says a dream come true. Yes, indeed. But it is very important. I want to state that the virtual readings gallery that we're in right now is a safe space. Any user exhibiting offensive or inappropriate behavior will be dismissed from the event immediately. So this is a safe space. Please remember that. And also, one last very important button on this screen is that center one right there. It says purchase the generosity here. That green button is a link straight to the Village Books website, and a page where our featured poets' books are all listed there for you that you can purchase. We encourage you, if you're feeling inspired this evening, to make a purchase and support the author this evening, and also support an independent bookstore. We are very happy that our event programming is free, and please remember that we are able to do that through book sale. And so to any of you who may have kicked in a few dollars at registration, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. So now we get to the fun part. Our featured author this evening. Luci Shaw was born in London, England. She is a poet and an essayist, and since 1986, she has been a writer-in-residence at Regent College in Vancouver. She is author of 38, although we discussed perhaps 39 it could be, books of poetry and creative nonfiction. Her writing has appeared in numerous literary and religious journals. In 2013, she received the 10th annual Denise Levertov Award for Creative Writing from Seattle Pacific University. She lives with her husband, John Hoyt, in Bellingham, Washington, also an accomplished author that we have welcomed to our readings gallery before. So she is here to present her latest book, this gorgeous book, The Generosity. So without further ado, join me in welcoming Luci Shaw. Luci, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, Claire, I just want to give a shout out to Village Books. You are the best independent bookstore that I've ever, with Powell's in Portland. That's another great book. But because you sell so many wonderful books, and you sell used books too. Mm-hmm. So that's a big plus for me. Anyway, you're great people, and we love you.
Well, thank you, and we love Powell's too. They are dear friends of ours. So, okay, so the stage, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Well, people often ask me how I came up with the title for this book, The Generosity. So I'm going to read a little something from my introduction, because that will, give you an idea of what I'm thinking. The title is a reminder of the prodigal green that flourishes everywhere in nature, despite our human depredations, and of the generosity of the Creator who planned the green of the world in a regenerative process that replenishes itself in cycles of seed and sprout. So I think where we live here in Bellingham is one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. We've got mountains, we've got islands, we've got shorelines, and the sound is full of sailboats. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be in this beautiful part of the world, and it gives to me, it is so generous to me as a human being to be part of it. Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to start reading a few poems, and I will tell you a little bit about where they came from. The first one is a pretty contemporary theme. It's called Virus. The absurdity of a world on its knees, behind its doors, whose fingers even may be traitors, and whose breath, created for living, may breed death. Its instruction, split up, stay apart. This is now the ultimate act of friendship. Like the moon of light at the bottom of a well, hope shines small. But if we stay head over the edge of the well, we may watch the deep water shimmer with supple possibilities. At noon, a pale sun shines, telling us we may still live in the light. So.
And can I ask you, when was that one written?
That was written pretty recently. It was one of the last poems I added to this book, and I think I wrote it in February. So that was when things were beginning to get tight and difficult. And this is where poetry comes from. It's from my everyday lives, from the experiences. We have to find some kind of meaning, some kind of coherence to the lives we live. And that's where poetry, I think, has a special contribution to make. I just encourage people to read poems, and if they get a book of poetry, to read the poems aloud. They're not meant to sit on the page, silent. They're meant to be spoken into the air. And that's when we discover sometimes some of the secrets that led to a poem being read. Just the little clues that connect the author with the reader. Okay, yes. Here's another one. It's called A Wild Embrace. How creation dares us into a wild embrace of what is too beautiful to ignore. You open your front door, you breathe, and all the old dust and confusion of your life falls behind you. You are not to obsess about it, no matter how it calls you. Instead, bend and examine closely how the grass has grown an inch under last night's rain, and the peony buds are swelling. This was written in the spring, obviously. The peony buds are swelling, and the tips of pale petals are already bursting free, like prisoners wrongly convicted and now released. There is such generosity out there, reaching toward you with hands open, claiming you, a created being issuing from the open mouth of God.
Goodness. That's
all
beautiful.
Right.
Luci, before we continue, before we get too far into this, I want to ask our audience, this has to do with your image. You look a little bit blurry to me, and I'm wondering if it is your internet connection. Could someone just type in the chat if Lucy appears blurry to you? Because I think that it might, yes, she does. Okay. If John is on the other computer, yes. Okay. People are saying, yes, you look blurry. If John is on the other computer, if we could ask him to please log out, that would probably sharpen up your image a little bit. And I hate to do that.
That's all right.
But I don't know if he can, if he's, I think he might be on, but anyway. Okay.
All right.
But we can hear you very well. We can, you sound great, and you're only a little bit blurry at this point. So,
okay. Well, I hope I get unblurred.
Well, I would like to say though, before I interrupted with that, totally unrelated thing, that your last poem, Linda did say that you're making her cry. So that was a beautiful, was a beautiful poem.
Dry your tears. I'll try and give you something less emotional, maybe.
Crying is good. Emotion is good.
Okay. This is called Wave Action. I long for a charged encounter with whatever is so lovely. I find myself transformed. Listen, have you heard the sound of a wave retreating down the angled stretch of just swept sand, edged with foam that shrinks with the sound of lace? Does it tell of regret at having failed to conquer the great beach? Or is it gathering itself for the next onslaught? It is a sound I sometimes hear internally, a vital endeavor fading, but leaving a kind of silver anticipation. And, if you, we live so close to the water that we sort of take the water for granted sometimes, but don't ever do that. Don't ever take our wonderful world for granted. Here's a poem I wrote out of a memory from a time when my husband and I were in France, and we were visiting the banks of the Seine River. And there are a lot of plane trees, Plane, train, all along the bank, all the way from France down to the Mediterranean. And so I decided I wanted to write a poem about those plane trees. So here it is. So you decide this is worth writing about or painting. The shapes of the branches on the trees, how the afternoon sun gleams on the variegated trunks, how their reflections echo in the river. You cannot change the image. It has been there for centuries. All you can do is move your own body, shifting the angle here and there, back and forth, so that you see the thing differently until you find a satisfaction. Is this how we solve the enigmas of living? Things are what they are, and God is who God is, unchangeable. To satisfy our souls, it is we who must move or be moved within the contours of grace until a fresh composition in space where light will beautify our faces enough to arrange us in a fresh, particular space in the creation. I love the fact that no matter where you live, whatever you do with your life, there are always opportunities for something to speak to you, to speak to your soul, to speak your own living. Okay, here's a poem called The Morning Walking. And it's from a little sentence from Simone Weil, the French philosopher and mystic. The beauty of the world is God's tender smile at us coming through nature. Great.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's as if creation is listening, absorbed in contemplation, just being there, like me. Landscape claims me as its inhabitant, where I am, wherever I am. Here on the trail, the air barely lifts a leaf among the green curtains of trees, or stirs the mist laying its pale garment over the hill under the bridge between the barns. Even under fog, your day is radiant, a common yet secretive beauty. Distant traffic is muted, birds silent. Be very quiet. Listen. A frog barks once in the marsh reeds. Beside the lane, the sentinel grasses of autumn hear your unspoken edict, lifting their pale gold seed heads along the verges, speaking without words.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And we do have a
Oh, wait a
comment.
minute. Another stanza. I had to turn the page.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, wait. Back into the walk. A bicycle passes. For the cyclist, the road is a river flowing under his pedals. The easy sound of tires on gravel, and then again the mercy of quiet. I am not what I was an hour ago. Oh, quietness, come home with me. Show me your green self through my window, away from the din of the world. I claim you, quietness, as I listen for you. Okay.
That's beautiful. And Erin says that she loves how often you remind us to listen, and I thoroughly agree with that. I think that it's easy to tune out and to not listen. And
yeah. All right, here's a poem. I want to tell you a little bit about my poetic process. People often ask me, where did the poems come from? And I have to tell you, I take the New Yorker magazine, which just has some of the most fantastic writing in the English language. It is so full of good stuff. And very often, as I'm reading an essay or a story or an article, a word seems to jump off the page and demand to be written into a poem. So that's what happens. This poem is called While Reading the New Yorker. A word flies off the page and through an open window in my imagination. A bird that got in and cannot leave, batting wings against my walls and bookcases, uttering piteous vowels of sound. Frenzied, she aims at the light. It is window glass, and it knocks her out. Seconds later, and she has come to life again, still frantic for exit. I move away quietly, closing the door of my mind behind me to lessen the anxiety in the room, leaving the window wide open. Later, after she has found her freedom, a winged presence remains and a feather on the floor. So that's where the poems come from.
And how long have you, how young were you when you first wrote your first poem?
I was probably about 3 or 4.
Wow.
I began putting little words together, and I will read a poem about that a little bit later, because I would write these little poems and put them in my dad's pocket, and he would show it to his friends. So that was my best audience. Here's a poem called White Space. This page And any page in any book I read is a pale sky in which, centered, the text kindles in my eye, leaping into focus, telling me this is where the author's plot develops next and next and next. My husband's paintings, framed in snowy oblong mats, draw our eyes focused to what once caught his artist's eye and urged his squirrel hair brush loaded with pigment to limn a landscape. Also, my notebook, its small blank page, pure as a guilt free conscience, waits ready as a fallow field for plowing with dark lines of verse that stutter, scattering like furrows on farmland. Good. Is it clearer now? Clear?
It's still a little bit blurry. I'm wondering if this internet is still in use somewhere else in the house. But we can hear you. We can hear you very well.
Okay. All right. All right. This is a very brief poem called Heart Work. My heart is a bird perched on the upper balcony of my mind. My heart is a baby in utero, engaged in private work. My heart is a stone until I turn it over and find life teeming underneath. So when you go out and you lift a stone in the forest, you never know what you might find. Okay, here's a poem called The Meaning of Grass, The Meaning of Grass. And I think I took this because of a verse in the prophecy of Isaiah. Your bones shall flourish like the grass. To write about the lives of grass, you might want to inhabit a meadow, maybe lying down for an hour, nestling in close to the earth like an animal, the seed heads tasseling above you in an air that smells hot and ripe and primitive. A cricket or two, bees bumbling on wild clover, a hawk in the blue dome arching over you. You invite a green juice to flow in your veins for an hour or so, for the stems to acquaint themselves with your alien body, to know that you, with a body that aches, that loves, that will fade, that urges you to ground yourself this day, which is unlike every other day in your breathing life. You doze, wake with a start, knowing that the prophet had it right. Okay, what's next? Oh, Jen and I, during this time of the pandemic, get out in the car almost every day and drive all over Skagit County, all over Whatcom County, and many times we pass meadows and fields that are full of cows, lots of cows out in the country. And I just love the sight of the cows feeding in the field. This is called Cow Sounds. Maybe the cattle will come to the pond and drink tonight, giving off gentle bovine smells and mooing at each other as warm cream swells in their udders. In Switzerland, we listened also for the language of bells on their necks as the great milky brown beasts with soft eyes move toward barn and milking shed. I watch also for the burly words, sounds that emit growls or thunder, but settle later into soft as the evening rain starts, an altogether agreeable event. And with the soaker come gentler lyrics, that river their way into our ears as if we were catchment ponds being filled to overflow. Do not doubt this brimming of possibility. Tell me if you have any questions, or if if something
Yes.
doesn't make sense, tell me about it. Maybe I can
Yes,
change it.
we, as I said at the beginning, we're encouraging audience participation. So if any of you have, some of you are chiming in with some lovely comments in the chat. If you have any questions for Luci, please feel free to type those in the chat too, and just anything that in particular that you're moved by. Or so yes, we invite participation.
Oh, thank you so much. You make
Linda
this so easy.
Oh, well, Linda wants to know if you ever travel to New York.
Oh, of course. Yes. My friend Madeline Legel, she was my best friend for 35 years, and I was her best friend.
Wow.
And I edited 11 of her books, and I would travel to New York City, and I'd be up in her penthouse in her dining room, and we'd have the big dining room, and we'd cover it with papers, and her cats would sit on the papers as we were editing. So yeah, New York City. I got to know my way around New York City quite a bit. It was a lot of fun. But
Oh
Madeline,
my goodness!
Madeline left us in quite recently, 2008.
Yeah.
But here, this is one of my favorite poems that I've ever written. It's called The O in Hope. Hope has this lovely vowel at its throat. Think how we cry, oh, as the sun's circle clears the ridge above us on the hill. O is the shape of a mouth singing, and of a cherry as it lends its sweetness to the tongue. Oh, say the open eyes at unexpected beauty, and then, wow. O is endless as a wedding ring, a round pool, the shape of a drop's widening on the water's surface. O is the center of love, and O is in the invention of a wheel. It multiplies in the zoo, doubles in a door that opens, grows in the heart of a green wood, in the moon, and in the endless looping circuit of the planets. Mood carries it, and books, and holy fools, cotton, a useful tool, and knitting wool. I love the double O in good and cosmos, and how O revolves, solves, is in itself complete, unbroken, a circle enclosing us, holding us all together, everything both in center and circumference, zeroing in to the omega that finds its ultimate center in the name of God. That is being made into a children's book.
Really?
Yes, I have an artist friend who's illustrating it.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Do you know? Do you know when?
It was quite unanticipated, but
and that's we're getting a lot of excited responses in the audience. Do you know when it will be complete?
Oh, it's still in process. We haven't signed the contract yet, but probably next year sometime.
Are you able to tell us who the artist is?
Yeah.
Can you tell us who the artist is?
His name is Ned Bustard, and he runs a little publishing house called Square Halo Books.
Okay.
But he's an artist. Anyway, he's a good friend. Yeah. All right. Are you ready for another one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know I am.
This is called Midnight Rain. And of course, we're entering once again into the rainy season. So I love this. Letting down from the water-laden sky, the little fists of rain drum on the skylight above our bed, imparting their version of the truth of heaven. I know that too often the rain will hold off, the grass darken and burn. In summer, even the flies grow listless. And that too is a half-heaven gift calling us to thankfulness when the heavy clouds burst open over the fields as a fresh and fragrant cool sweeps in. We open our windows, we breathe the change that renews us. How lucky that a poem can be made of nothing much, that we don't need to wait for the weather to shift. Words arriving from somewhere, spattering like rain on a page. So I love the black marks. And I love the fact that poems are centered on a wide space, which draws your eye to the heart of the poem. Okay, I'm losing a.
Oh dear.
I think I'm back.
Okay, we hear you.
This is called language, and it's really about the practice that a poet has to have of submitting their work for magazines or journals, and it's an endless process, and sometimes it takes 3 or 4 months before you even get a response. And this is one of the biggest frustrations, I think, of writing poetry and getting it published. So, but this is one that had a good ending. It's called Language. How the fresh words, the insignificant vowels, the jots and tittles walk themselves across a blank page, stumbling over fricatives and semicolons, but getting up, not wanting to stop at the end of the line. Adjectives crawl to me like strangers in a strange land. And then the wrong word, the word chosen by accident, the one I don't even particularly like, turns the poem into a fresh miracle on the page. And later, someone I haven't met who reads the words I've submitted to his journal is struck dumb with delight, asking for more and sending a small check in the mail that is just enough for a great bottle of Cabernet. So that's sometimes the good thing that happens.
May I ask you when you
Hello?
what that was like?
Sorry?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm just wondering what it was like when do you remember selling your very first poem?
I wrote poetry when I was in high school. It was in the yearbook, that sort of thing. And then in college, I had a wonderful professor who he would do things like this. I would be required. He was teaching the Romantic poets, and he would require me to write an essay about Wordsworth or something. And instead, I would write a long epic poem about something completely different. And he was so sweet. He'd say, "That is great. Send it off to the Atlantic tomorrow." So, I mean, he didn't mind that I disobeyed.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the wonderful things I had about going to school, going to college. Oh, here's a poem that actually I submitted to the Sue Boynton Poetry Contest that's held every spring. And having trouble with my earbuds.
Oh dear.
Unable to see far. Unable to see far, I write what's near. How snow responds to footprints and the garden to a spade. How my cat's small lion face relaxes under my caress. Her words fall through me like water, though some thicken into thoughts like scars. How the two chairs on our deck, each a foot deep in snow, face each other as if conversing about the weather. How today, when I complained of cold, my husband covered me with the old green blanket, and I napped and dreamed of summer. How this afternoon one robin, having arrived early, sits now on the power line thinking to himself, this is not so smart.
That's funny.
Okay. Oh, come on.
Oh, are you losing your earbuds?
Yep. I need to have bigger ears.
I do not have good luck with the earbuds. That's why I have to look like a pilot and wear my
Yeah, but we trust you because you're a good pilot.
Oh, thanks.
And this is a poem I wrote last spring. It was the last poem that got into this book, and it's called Dandelion. As the days warm and lengthen, the grass is getting happy almost overnight. Under my window, the first star of spring opens its eye on the front lawn, yellow as butter. It is only one, but it is one. And in the nature of things, and like the multiple asterisks seeding the night sky, it will flourish and take over every grassy bank in town. I long to be prolific as the dandelion, spinning pale parachutes of words, claiming new territory by the power of fluff. The stars in their courses have bloomed an unending glory across the heavens. But here in my yard, a local constellation prepares to launch multiple short-lived radiant coronas to proclaim the new sprung season. And of course, I use that word corona. It didn't have the negative and difficult connotation. It's
right.
It's gained in the last months. Okay. How does anybody have a poem they'd like me to read, or?
Well, actually, we have a couple of questions that are kind of in the queue.
Sure.
Actually, Sarah would like to just comment on that last poem that you read, Dandelion. Sarah says, Lucy, that last poem is a great picture of how your aging has limited you in some ways, but opened new avenues of seeing as well. And how else have you experienced that in this life stage?
Well, I am so grateful. I'm going to be 92 in about 2 months.
That's wonderful.
But I just love my life. I'm so enthusiastic about what I have. I have wonderful kids. I have a great husband. I've got I've got 4 great grandkids now, and one of them is turning into a writer. So maybe the genes are being passed down the generations. All right. Anybody want another poem?
Well, I'm certain that people want more poems. I will let you know that there are other questions too.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready for those, you just
sure. Let's do a question or two.
Okay. So Erin, this is an interesting question. Erin wants to know if there are any poems that you've written that you haven't wanted to share with the world because perhaps just their personal nature or something private or specific. Do you keep? Are there poems that you keep just for you?
I probably is. Maybe one about sex. I don't know.
There you go. Are you looking to see if John is over your shoulder?
I'm looking at John. Yeah, that might be a little bit too revealing.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. And then on a completely different note, Joanne would like to know, when you were a child, did you receive encouragement from your family and teachers? I would imagine that your dad getting those sweet
Oh
poems in his
yes.
pocket was probably
Oh yes.
very encouraging.
He was a great encourager. My mother, not so much. She would look. I'd read a poem to her, and she'd say, "Very nice, dear. Very nice." So that was the probably the best I could expect from her. She was not an easy person.
And how
Uh,
about your teachers? Did your teachers encourage your poetry?
I had wonderful teachers, yes, but my life was uh, well. I was born in England. We lived in Australia. Then we moved to Canada. And then we moved back to Australia. Then we moved back to Canada. And then I came to the US to go to college. And so a lot of my education was very sort of disruptive. And my dad always said, "Oh, you kids are bright. You'll catch up." But he didn't know how difficult it was, for instance, to enter a school system in Sydney, Australia, where they were in the middle of quadratic equations, and I had never got the basics. So trying to catch up on something like that, I don't have a mind for mathematics in the first place. Words are my favorite, not figures. Okay.
Okay. Um, Well, we do have a request. If
Yes.
you, Sarah says that I love your poem Reconstruction. If you want to read that, is Reconstruction in the Generosity, or is
I'm
that in
trying
a
to.
different?
I'm trying to think. I'm looking at my.
Okay, I'm looking too.
I don't think it's in the book.
Okay, it's in a different one, perhaps.
Yeah, but thank you for knowing about it. Thank you for liking it. I wish
Um,
I could read. I don't read I can't recite poems from memory.
oh,
Um,
sure. Well,
I'm
your
just.
body of work is huge. It would be amazing if you
Yeah.
could. Do you have any? Sarah wants to know if you uh, where could I find any poems that you've written on grief? Do you have a particular collection that maybe has poems on grief?
Well, I wrote a book um, called God in the Dark, and I wrote it when my first husband was diagnosed with lung cancer and died 18 months later. So that whole book is the whole process of learning to grieve and trying to remain steady. There's a lot of grief work in that book, and it's still available. I believe Regent College has it in their bookstore. It's called God in the Dark.
God in the Dark. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And we did have someone, and I apologize. I neglected to ask you this. Are you able? I didn't know how much you and John are getting out into the world. Are you able to sign the copies of your books that we have at Village Books if people order them?
Oh, sure.
Great.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. So,
That's the easy part. That's the
okay.
fun part.
All right. Oh,
Just
good.
as
I
long as
didn't.
I know the name of the person I'm to sign it for. Yeah.
So for those of you watching, if you place an order with Village Books, you can get your book signed, and just make sure that either on your online order in the comments field, or to whoever you're talking to who's taking your order over the phone, let them know to whom you would like the book signed. If you want it signed to someone, or if you just want Luci to sign her signature.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Luci, for being willing to do that.
Oh, no problem. Grateful to do it. I love signing books because it means people are buying them. That's right.
We like that too.
Oh, here's a poem called Midnight. In bed, and a kind of loneliness settles. I'm wakeful, wondering. I reach out my hand from under the sheet and over the edge into the empty space beyond, and feel for God's hand, his large, calloused palm, a shallow cave, fingers curling their intimate way around mine. Not a word spoken, but in the dark, a glow, like a nightlight near the door. Sometimes that's the way God speaks. Here's a poem about my cat, Bob. My cat's name is Bob.
Oh, what was the name of the last poem you just read?
Oh gosh. Let's see if I can find it again. Yeah, it's called Midnight.
Midnight. Thank you. You did say that, and we forgot Midnight.
Okay, here's one called The Rules, and I'm not a rule person. How I am bound by time and its unflinching hours. How to be free of clocks, calendars, binaries, of highways running both ways and the center line that insists that we stay in our own lane. Of the window thermometer and its rising red line that dictates what I will wear today. How to find a notebook with no rules, with smooth blank pages to write on, vertically or at a slant, depending on my mood. Even a tentative sketch of a tree or a curious pebble. To sleep until I feel like waking hours ahead of the alarm, or later. To acknowledge that light is both a particle and a wave, like me, when I'm unsure exactly why I believe what I believe. To be flexible about what to make for dinner. Or, here we go, for dinner. And relaxed enough not to feel guilty if my husband kindly suggests we go out. Or to write a poem with no discernible rhyme scheme that happily meanders across the page. Here's the one about the cat. It's called Wild. On the doormat, a tuft of blue-gray feathers, and 2 days later, a tissue of white bird bones, fine as lace. And now our house cat, Bob, intrepid hunter, whose feral blood wakes at the sight of wings in flight, sits there, purring velvet, licking his paws and staring us down with his bold green eyes. Oh, here's the poem I was talking about, Family of Origin, talking about my parents. Our parents keep circulating in the rooms of our lives. Mine are long gone, but if it would satisfy them, I would take my heart out of its cage and gift wrap it for their anniversary. I glimpse them often, Dad reading a book over my shoulder, now and again offering words of advice that made sense 50 years ago. The words form clots in my memory, cells bright as blood, a private language unlike any other. My mother demanded mountains of me. I managed to supply foothills. They were lovely foothills, but failure would hang in the air. We still seem to meet in the heart of an old argument, words hanging unresolved, glittering sparks in the dark air. Sometimes when I feel most wrong about how to remember them, I am most right, seeing them as they settled into the grooves of my own memory. I am my own narrative arc. I arrange the candles and flowers on my mantelpiece the way my mother would have done it. And for my father, I still write small poems like the ones he carried in his briefcase to show his friends when I was very young.
Oh, I really like that one, Lucy. I like that one a lot. So we have another question, but I think it's one that we've already answered, but maybe we can get confirmation on that. Is the Generosity your 38th book or your 39th book?
Well, it depends how you count the books. I did write a Bible study guide once that would qualify as a book, but it wasn't, this kind of book. So if we count that, that would be 39. Otherwise, 38. Okay.
Very good. And I think that Erin has a good idea. She says, I think a poem about those earbuds is in order. You could write a poem about your earbuds.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement. Oh, here's one about knitting. I love knitting, and I probably knit over 100 fisherman knit sweaters with all the cables and knots, etc., etc. But this is a poem about the yarn that my aunt in New Zealand used to send me. First, it's the yarn that beckons, fleece buttery with lanolin from the just shorn sheep, a woolly proof against wind and rain, combed, carded, spun. It becomes a skein of possibility. For color, you dunk it in a vegetable stew, petals, leaves, bark, seeds, until it rises from the vat like an animal and offers itself into your hands. It was the habit of my New Zealand aunt, her name was Lucy, by the way, to gather damaged fleeces from the local farmer's black sheep. Once she mailed across an ocean 10 pounds of dense yarn spun on her spinning wheel for me to knit into a suit. Later, I ripped it out, repurposed it, ample material for sweaters, socks, caps. Like the way we sometimes need to switch directions in our lives, developing original patterns, growing designs never seen before. How's our time, Claire?
Well, it's flying. We only have about 5 or 6 minutes left. But can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. So we don't have a whole lot of time left. So if anyone has any final questions they want to ask, and I also, on a personal note, I would like to tell you that when I first just kind of opened your book to any poem, and this is, I think, one of the amazing magical things about poetry, is when you open up a book of poetry, it's uncanny how the poem that you need to see or that really resonates with you is often the one that you just happen to open right to. Yeah. And so I opened it up to page 54, which is Driving to Winthrop. And Winthrop is one of those magical places where the sights, the beauty, the sounds, the smells, all of it, it's just a feast for the senses, right? It's just gorgeous. And and you absolutely hit the nail on the head about how you can't replicate it with a photograph. You even mentioned the aspen leaves. The last time I was there, I was riding my bike around and stopping on the side of the road and trying to capture with my camera those beautiful golden aspen leaves and the bark of the tree. And it's impossible, but this poem, this was just the one that absolutely an arrow straight to me. So
Oh,
thank you for that. I
well,
appreciate it. And
Claire,
so,
you won't believe this, but we're planning to drive to Winthrop on Monday.
okay.
We've
That's,
made a reservation in the
oh,
town.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Oh, okay.
Oh,
So really quickly, we've got some questions that we'll
okay.
try to get in the last few minutes. So, who are the other poets you would encourage us to be reading right now? Are there anyone you'd recommend?
Of course, Mary Oliver.
No.
Actually, read Madeline Langle's poems. She wrote sonnets. They just seem to flow out of her without effort. She wrote the most wonderful songs. I published three books of her poetry. One is called A Cry Like a Bell. The other was called The Weather of the Heart. And, she really was such a wonderful writer, both in her fiction, but in her poetry, it was especially meaningful to me. Oh, yeah, Wendell Berry, of course, wonderful poet and naturalist, and Kentucky tobacco farmer. But one of my sons and I talk about a poem. He lives in California, but we talk about a poem once a week. We choose a poem we both like, and we read it and sort of talk about what it feels like to us. So that's a lovely
That's
contact I
that's a
have.
wonderful,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's such a wonderful idea. I bet that people in this audience will be inspired to do a similar thing with others. Let's see. Someone wants to know what your favorite sweet is. Do you have a favorite sweet treat?
Sweet treat. I love the chocolate covered macadamia nuts that you get at Costco.
Yes. So
Yes.
good.
Yes.
So good. She says, me
They're
too.
too tempting, and I need to lose weight. So,
But
yeah,
macadamias, they're so buttery and yummy, and
yeah,
then with chocolate too. Oh, let's
yeah.
see. Linda says that she loves the book that you wrote with Madeline Lingle, Friends for the Journey.
Yes, yes.
Um,
That was a fun book to write.
yes.
Yeah, we had a
And
mutual
then,
friend. We had a mutual friend, Madeline and I. Her name was Barbara Braver, and the three of us did a lot of traveling together. We traveled to England, Ireland, Wales. We traveled to Iona, and yeah, so we we had a lot of fun just writing, traveling together. Once we made reservations, and we thought we were getting the cheapest hotels, and it turned out we made a mistake with the money exchange, and we had reserved
oh
all
no.
these really expensive castles, and anyway, that was a
Oh, that
a
must be
while.
nice.
I think we would know better.
Okay, let's see. And one of the last question is, let's see. Aaron wants to know if you have ever read. I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce her name correctly. Rhina. That's Rhina. Espalait. Espallait.
No,
Are you
I
familiar with
haven't.
that? Okay. Okay. She
Yeah.
says that her poetry reminds her of yours.
Well, I'll have to look her up.
Somebody to look for. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So Claire, make sure that I get that spelling. Maybe I'll,
I will.
yeah,
I will
that'd
do
be
that.
great. Okay.
I will email that to you. So it is exactly 6 o'clock, and I am so grateful for this hour. This has been just delightful. And please remember that if you click on that green button, you can go straight to a page with Luci's books, and you can order signed copies of books from us. The audience is all saying thank you to you, Luci,
Well,
and so
thank
am
you,
I.
everybody. I wish I could meet you all in person. It just, this is the community that we long for. It's people to read and understand and communicate with each other. And for Claire, you make that possible. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And
Okay. All right.
I think that we are everybody is sending their love and saying thank you for such a lovely Friday evening, Lucy. And so I think, yes, we're going to say over and out, and everybody have a lovely weekend and stay safe and well.
Thank you, Claire. Okay. Bye.